Madam Speaker, I thank my good friend from South Carolina for yielding me time. Millions of Americans all across this country are struggling and they need our help. What they don't need is more Republican gamesmanship at their expense. The Democrats have literally forced the Republicans to realize that they can't just take policy measures that help the rich while taking away from the poor. I may support this bill in light of the fact that it will give a payroll tax cut to 160 million Americans. It also extends unemployment insurance to those Americans who've left their jobs through no fault of their own. And it will allow seniors access to their physicians under Medicare. And footnote there, we really should do the doc fix permanently and stop piecemealing and playing games with this particular measure. The bill is not perfect. The pay for it is nowhere near perfect. And the length of the extension is not perfect. But it does contain critical provisions that many Democrats negotiated to keep in the bill. While we were able to compromise today, I do not think that my Republican friends deserve too much credit. Since they regained the majority, the American people have seen firsthand their obstructionist policies by their actions. In fact, earlier this week, my friends on the right attempted to bring to the floor a transportation bill so flawed that mine and others, former colleague and transportation secretary and good friend of mine, this is the most partisan transportation bill I've ever seen, and it is also anti-safety, and it hollows out our number one priority, which is safety. It's the worst transportation bill I've ever seen during 35 years of public service. The American people want a government that understands the challenges that they face daily. Republicans want an economy that works great for the greediest and leaves the neediest out in the cold. Just ask a teacher in my constituency in Belgrade or Margate or a firefighter in Fort Lauderdale or Pompano Beach, and they'll tell you an extra $1,000 in their pockets makes a huge difference in putting food on the table, gas in the car, and being able to stay in their homes. We've been forced to strike this compromise because for decades, Republicans have pushed policies that favor the wealthy. We should not forget that while we are debating how to pay for this payroll tax cut, unemployment insurance, and payments to Medicare physicians, our nation's massive deficits are due in large part to Republican tax cuts for the wealthiest in America. The fact of the matter is that the wealthy have continued to pay less and less taxes. In the 1980s, President Ronald Reagan started to lower tax rates. And then President George Bush slashed capital gains and income tax rates for the wealthy to the now historic lows. As I travel throughout the constituency that I'm privileged to represent, into areas where the unemployment rate in some places in the Glades is 40%, I ask myself, who's actually benefiting from these tax cuts for the rich? It's certainly not the police officer living in Boynton or the nurse working at the VA hospital or the community health center in West Palm Beach. Madam Speaker, while I'm pleased that we've come to a compromise to extend unemployment insurance, I remain deeply concerned that this bill reduces benefits from 99 weeks to as little as 73 weeks through December. I hear daily from constituents who are approaching the end of their unemployment period and are at a loss as to where to turn next. Although the economy may be starting to recover, what are we supposed to tell those people who've been looking for a job for months and months on end. What kind of compromise are they supposed to strike with unemployment? The best way to reduce the deficit is to put money into the hands of people who spend it. This is how we support our communities. If we invest more money in Main Street, consumers will have more money in their pockets to spend on putting food on the table, gas in their cars, and as I said, be able to stay in their homes. Every American should have the opportunity to succeed. Opportunity should not be limited by geography, race, gender, or the size of one's bank account. Yet, thanks to massive gaps in the tax code, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The top 1% of earners are responsible for 20% of the nation's annual income, up from 10% in 1981. The wealthiest CEOs are paid 400 times what the average worker earns. Only 30 years ago, it was 20 times as much. Americans in the highest tax bracket are supposed to pay 35% of their income taxes. However, since President Bush slashed the capital gains rate to 15%, the top 400 wealthiest that we continue to identify, and I wonder about the top 4,000, for example, pay only 15% in taxes on 80% of their income. As the law is currently written, any wealthy American paying the full 35% needs to get a new accountant. In addition to reducing the term of unemployment insurance coverage, this bill raises an additional $15 billion by requiring federal employees to contribute a larger amount of retirement accounts. My understanding is this is a grandfathered measure that will protect the ones that are federal workers now. But I'm not sure that this is going to satisfy members on either the right or left, or the Democrats or Republicans in this measure, since it's addressing federal employees, and there were other ways to get to that $15 billion. Federal employees are currently in their second year of a pay freeze, while my colleagues across the aisle only a few weeks ago voted to freeze federal employee pays for a third year. Republicans don't think twice about limiting federal workers' ability to support their families, but are more than willing to shut down the government when bankers are asked to pay their fair share of taxes on their bonuses. How much can we continue to pick on federal workers? They're not fat cats. They're postal workers, receptionists, janitors, teachers, nurses, social workers, and police officers, to name a few that are the fundamental underpinning of this nation. How much can we continue to pile on their backs? We've already broken their bank accounts. How much weight should the wealthiest American who can afford it carry? Investing in America is how we are going to create jobs. Let's build the infrastructure for the coming era of green energy. Let's fix our aging highways and bridges, please. Let's adequately fund our schools so our children can get a good education and can compete on a global level. Doing these kinds of things today will create a brighter America for generations to come. With that, Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman.